Hello, everyone. Today's conversation is particularly meaningful to me, not only as a Black woman, but a Caribbean immigrant. Our guest today is Sophia George, a molecular geneticist, and I want to welcome her to the Defining You podcast. Let's bring her in. Hello, Sophia. Welcome to the Defining You podcast. I'm so glad you could join us today.
Thank you for having me. Hello, everybody.
Nice. So, what I like to do before we get into the meat of the conversation, I like to have my guests, start off by giving a brief introduction of themselves and tell us about yourself. Who is Sophia George?
Right. So I am a Dominica native. I was born and raised on the island of Dominica. I then went to Northern Ontario, Canada to do my undergraduate degree and then my PhD in molecular and medical genetics at the University of Toronto. I did some more training at the Princess Margaret Cancer Center in Toronto, and then I spent some time at Duke University before I became faculty at University of Miami and Sylvester Congress Cancer Center. So that's my professional life. Otherwise, I'm a mom of two teenagers, and I'm a wife. I'm the eldest I'm the eldest. So there are three of us. I have two younger sisters. I'm an aunt and a
That's
friend,
always
I think.
important.
And yeah, exactly. I have a large family, so I'm a cousin and everything.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So, how did you decide I'm going to become a doctor? What was that driving force that inspired you to say, I want to be a doctor?
Um, so there's some little stories in between the drive,
Mm-hmm.
and that maybe it's not necessarily the drive to be a doctor, but it was the drive to do the best that I could. Um,
Right.
and so for me, that was obtaining a PhD in molecular genetics.
Mm-hmm.
Once I began that road to science and biology, I really enjoyed research. I really enjoyed asking questions. And of course, coming from an island in Dominica, we don't know necessarily, but at the time I didn't know that I have an MD and a PhD. And so
Mm-hmm.
I really, during my undergraduate degree, my professors expected me to go into medicine. And I was like, no, I want to go into research because I was enamored by it. In my undergrad, I
Wow.
did research.
Mm-hmm.
And so and to be able to be a bona fide, I mean, not that's again, it's based on mentorship and based on what your limited view of the world, and as you get
Right.
older you have a more expansive view. But the next step was to do a PhD. And I remember I did my undergrad in in French in a small town, in biology in Ontario. And I remember not being happy there. And my
Mm-hmm.
mother telling me many times, she's like, just get the undergrad done. Where you do your graduate degree is important, because I even then
Mm-hmm.
knew at that point that I wanted um, to pursue as much as I could. And for us, that's having a PhD. And
Mm-hmm.
and and I enjoy books, and I love to read, and I like to ask lots of questions. And so precocious is maybe one thing it would you could use to describe me
Mm-hmm.
as a younger person. So yeah, so I just kept going.
Mm-hmm. So, what is it about research that you decide I'm not going to medicine, but I want to be on the research side of things?
So yeah, I just wanted to understand how things work and be able to answer those questions with my
Mm-hmm.
hands and my my brain. And once I started seeing the research world, it was just a cool environment. You got to meet so many different people from all over the world. You
Mm-hmm.
could ask a question, like you just like, why are the leaves green during the summer and they turn orange in the fall, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then go and use tools or develop tools to answer those questions. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's almost it's been innovative, it's been creative. And I that's some people have creative skills like art and painting and writing. And I think for me, mine was asking questions and figuring out how to answer them, solve the puzzles that I was interested in.
So when I introduced you, I said that you were a molecular scientist. What is that?
A molecular geneticist. So,
Geneticist, yes.
yeah. So what is that? That's a type of science that we focus on the DNA. We focus on how genes work, if how mutated genes work or do not work, how that affects the cell biology, and how that can contribute to disease. So in my field, I study hereditary, inherited breast and ovarian cancer syndrome. And that is a disease that is linked to having a mutation in a group of genes, but there are two common ones. And so I study in the laboratory how having a mutation can how does that increase the risk for breast and ovarian cancer? And so I study the cells, I study DNA, protein, what the cells look like, how they behave under certain conditions. And then I also study people in the community, how many people have this mutation and in whom this mutation, how common is it, and what happens in different populations who have that mutation compared to others.
So you could have gone into any other area of research. Why did you choose this particular area?
So I chose this area. I would say initially I wanted to be a microbiologist.
Okay.
I wanted to actually, that's what I thought, to eventually go and work for the military. And many times I almost clicked on a link to start. But after my PhD, I wanted to, so I didn't do my PhD in microbiology. I started rotating in a lab to work on HIV, which is what I did in my undergrad. And then I had to rotate in a different lab, and the different lab was the scientist, and he ended up being my PhD mentor, works on stem cells. And coming from the Caribbean, I was like, that's so cool, like embryonic stem cells, and then I can perturb genes, and I can look at the effects of those genes and look at how these genes affect developmental biology and how. So I was blown away. Wow. And I'm like, I want to do that instead. And then once I was done with that for a long time, I realized my father had passed away from cardiovascular disease, a heart disease. And a few of my other family members had, these traits of cardiovascular diabetes, hypertension. And I remember thinking, well, I have all this education and training. Like, how am I going to use these tools, these skills that I have to understand what's happening, not just in my family, but in my community? And so I applied to do my postdoctoral training in cancer, but that was an opportunity that was offered to me, and I took it because at the time I was also learning of the burden of cancer, not just in my family or people related to my family, but also my community, my cousins, friends, and it seemed like it was all around me, and so I needed to develop those skill sets, and that's how I ended up. And now I'm all in to figuring out why cancer is not why, but how, and especially in people of African ancestry.
Yeah, so I really want to get into that, but I also want to just touch on some things that you said earlier, because we have people that may be listening. When you said this was suggested to you, is that someone you looked up to?
Yeah, so in my story, I don't talk about specifically the mentors, but I've been fortunate to have some great mentors and some crappy ones. To have no mentors at the time when that would have maybe changed, So in my undergrad, when I did the PhD instead of the MD route, which I had gotten accepted to the MD. I had applied, but I didn't go. I got accepted and I didn't go because I was like, I really wanted this research. And I remember there was a time I felt like there was some information happening, like there was something some people knew and I didn't know it.
Right.
Because in the middle of my PhD, I remember meeting someone who was in an MD PhD, and I remember asking them questions, but they were annoyed with my questioning, and it was just because I was like, oh, this is so new. Like I felt like I didn't know this was an option. And is it too late for me? And actually, I decided for me it was not too late, but like I was already on my path. But during all of those, I ended up meeting some wonderful folks who gave me great opportunities. They were sponsors, they were advocates, and also mentors. Um, and so, yes, it was advice. It was also folks giving me, as I said, being a like sponsor, like allow me to join studies that
Yeah.
were not necessarily my primary focus. I could learn.
Right.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you had a lot of people who look like you, so I'm going to ask you the question. What was your experience with being a Black woman in the sciences? Did you see men or women who look like you?
So in my undergrad, there were two Black faculty in the Northern Ontario. One of them was from Madagascar. She taught us virology, I remember quite clearly. I can see her face. And then the other was a genetics professor, and he was from a West African country, and I don't remember the country. I think I didn't pay attention to the country at the time. And then when I did my PhD, there were no Black faculty, and I don't even know if there are any currently at the University of Toronto in that department. Now and then I check. And I'm like,
Wow.
so to say, and there was one other student who was half Black. His dad was, I shouldn't be even identified because that's easy to identify who a person was, but they had a Caribbean heritage and European heritage. But he was super light skinned, but really cool dude.
Right.
Very, very, and that was it. Everybody else was mostly European for sure, ancestry, Asian, and likely Southeast Asian, like from India, one of the subcontinents. So it was isolating many times, but then it's Toronto, so it's very multicultural. And so I just embraced what was around me, but always aware, always, everywhere, always aware. And because of this accent that I have, it made me stand out even more. And so I always have to tell my story. And then I worked really hard in saying that I wanted my work to speak for me and for people not to be distracted by my voice and how I looked.
Okay.
But it was not always the case because I was taught recently, and I don't know if it's recent, like this, not this year, must have been like during COVID anyways, where there was time to do a lot of introspection and also commune with others, that sometimes you have to speak up for yourself. You have to speak up for your work, because even with your best work, some people might appropriate your work. And so how are people going to know it's you doing the work? Right. Even if your name might be on it, but people might say, well, I'm the one telling her what to do,
Stand up for yourself.
So now, yes, I have to stand up for myself. So now, though, there are a few more Black people, not enough of us, but more than for sure during my undergrad, for sure during my PhD, more than even during my postdoctoral training in Toronto. And I'm Duke. Well, I was in a Black city. I was in Durham, so there was Blackness all around me, and that actually opened up my eye about the discordance between, or the differences amongst the Black populations, the immigrant Caribbean population, the African American population. That made me appreciate their experiences and our experiences and how different they are, but there are similarities clearly with us living in the United States.
I was asking you this because I was looking at some research and I see a very small number of Black people in this in being
Yeah.
becoming scientists and engineers. So I was just wondering what was that like for you? And so you said it's getting better, which is very encouraging for people who are listening and may want to maybe hearing you and said, you know what, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but listening to you, this is probably an area where I can probably contribute something. So why don't I go and study in that area? So for those who are listening, why is it important to have more Black folks in the scientific field?
It is important, just like everything else, that we are also at the table, at the benches, at the bedside, treating disease, understanding health,
Mm-hmm.
and discovering the solutions and understanding the biology that's driving those differences that we see.
Mm-hmm.
So, as I said, as a result of me being an immigrant, right?
Right.
Black immigrant, and then living in a Black city and interacting with folks from who were born and raised in the US for multiple generations.
Mm-hmm.
That perspective allowed me to design my studies to capture those differences, right?
Wow.
So if someone not from our community, for
Mm-hmm.
example, would have that blind spot. They would maybe know, okay, I have a different accent,
Mm-hmm.
but they would maybe be appreciative of the cultural differences,
Right.
of the experience of immigrating, not immigrating, of being raised in certain environments where it was oppressive, or your parents were exposed to, segregation, and what that environment looks like for you and growing up, right? And how that might
Wow.
affect your body, your biology. Um, so yeah, so it's important that we are also trying to solve the problems that are
That
affecting
affect
us.
us. Oh yes, I completely agree with you there. So now there's a study that you're involved in. Your study of the Black genome is being sponsored by the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, and it is fascinating. Let me tell you. How did you become involved in this kind of project?
So I there was a call, right? They put out a call, what's called the Ancestry Network, that they
Mm-hmm.
put out. And I am a member of the African Caribbean Cancer Consortium. It
Mm.
is led by a colleague, a friend, and mentor at Fox Chase. He's Jamaican. And it
Mm-hmm.
is a consortium across, I think, 26 different countries, where we have scientists, all types of scientists, so behavioral scientists, basic scientists, clinicians, population scientists, what else? All the types of scientists you can think of. And and I'm one of the leaders for the women's working group. And so, as I said, I study breast and ovarian cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a recent experience that drove my wanting to understand at the cellular level
Mm-hmm.
the spectrum of normal in our bodies,
Right.
right? So there's a few things. One, Black people or people of African ancestry are underrepresented in many studies by health studies.
Yes.
And then, in addition to us being underrepresented in the health studies, but underrepresented in biospecimen. So, for example, if we want to look at the genetics of a disease like breast cancer, where 90%, 95% of the samples we have are European, but we know that there is a health disparity, a worse outcome in Black women, that Black women develop a high grade disease, higher chances of them developing high grade disease than white women, women of European
Mm.
ancestry. So then, how are we going to understand at the biologic level how it is that affecting us if if we're not being studied
Right.
in an equitable way? And so that was that call. And I said to my colleagues and collaborators from around the world, I said, hey, I would like to, and I had funding looking at single cell analysis in the fallopian tubes.
Mm-hmm.
So already that I had gotten, and I said, I would like to apply that approach across the African diaspora and to
Wow.
take into context where people are, and also
Yes.
us here, right? So the study is looking at breast, fallopian tube, and prostate normal tissue
Mm.
in folks in Nigeria, in Kenya, in Bahamas, Haiti, Jamaica, and Miami. And we're going to be looking at what normal looks like, the spectrum of normal, right? In women who are having risk-reducing surgery or some kind of surgery where we can access normal tissue. We'll be studying RNA and also the DNA of the individuals, so we can map some of the cells that are in our body that we think might be increasing our risk to developing cancer.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going back from the beginning.
Right.
And so I'm the lead scientist in that study.
And so far, what is fascinating to you as you're beginning to go through this kind of study?
So one of the things, let's not even talk about the science yet.
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk about just the ability to do this study. So I'm grateful that we were selected for funding. In addition to this study, the scientific components, we have a community outreach component where our goal is to have front-facing engagement with people, communities, Black communities here in the US and in the places where we have the study in the Caribbean and in Africa, to talk about, one, the biology of disease, and also why it's important to participate in research. In addition to that, we have a capacity building activity. So this technology is it's advanced technology where we are mapping single cells in tissues and looking at the genes that are expressed, and then using that expression and mapping it to our genome, like what risk we may have. And so in order to do that, we have to explain to my colleagues in Haiti and my colleagues in Kenya and Nigeria, we have to teach them how to collect the tissues. We have to teach them how to preserve the tissues,
right,
and how to interpret the data. So that part is happening right now too. I'm having our IRB, the ethics board approve the study, and then ensuring that it's in the languages that are dominant in the places that we're studying. And you see like how it's like, so the science, in addition to that, so now the science, I can talk about the science, is that we've started to see small populations of cells. And again, this is like, I wouldn't say preliminary, it is preliminary data, but it is an evolving data set, right? So the more we do, the more we will find out. But we know that there are some populations of cells in tissues that have similar properties to cancer. And our question is how early and what additional properties do these cells require to become cancer or not? And so anyway, so what we're going to be doing is looking at all the populations together, like Haitians, Jamaicans, Bahamians. We'll be looking at them separately. We'll be looking at the breast and the fallopian tube and the prostate, because guess what? We know that people of African ancestry develop high-grade disease. So high-grade prostate cancer, high-grade breast cancer, high-grade, which means usually aggressive, ovarian cancer. So what about our African ancestry-ness is contributing to that? And we have now the ability to look at subpopulations. So East Africans, West Africans, Haitians alone, Jamaicans alone, and then together, and African Americans alone and together with the rest. So that's essentially the study. It's a 3-year study. We just started in January, 4 months in, and I'm excited.
So can you just say specifically, what is it that you are looking to find? Maybe you answered that, but I'm just trying to, what is it that you're looking to find?
Yeah, so this is an exploratory kind of study. We hypothesize that we will see signatures or defining features across the African, like people of African ancestry, and that those defining features will give us an insight into why we develop high-grade aggressive disease at younger ages. That's what we're looking for.
So when you say we, you're talking about the Black population,
the team,
right? Okay.
Yeah. yeah, so I'm talking about the African, like the African American, like West African, East African, like the populations. And then when I say what we expect to find, I mean my study team.
Okay, all right, okay. Um, this is really very important work because one of the things in my reading, I found out that the region in the Caribbean, especially, have the highest burden of cancer in the world, especially breast cancer is the leading cause of death for Caribbean women. Um,
Yeah.
and I'm hoping in your study that you will probably find out why it is that way. So I'm saying that your study is a very important work, and some of our listeners may want to know if there are ways for them to become involved in the sciences, or they might think maybe it's a little bit too late because they've missed the opportunity to go to medical school. What do you think is the best place to start?
So it's never too late to do anything as long as you're alive and breathing, first of all.
Mm-hmm.
But let's say you have already done your undergraduate degree, for those people who have or not, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if you have not done your undergraduate degree and you graduated high school and you have been in the workforce, you can always start slow, go to community colleges and do like a biology course, a math course, a chemistry course. And sometimes it will feel difficult, but if that's what you want to do, you pursue that. There are many ways to contribute into the biomedical workforce.
Mm-hmm.
It is not just having a PhD. We need people who are clinical research coordinators. We need like the full spectrum, right? We need individuals like data scientists. Data science is like such a needed component of all the stuff that I'm talking about. It's
Mm-hmm.
data, and
Yes.
you have to have specific skill sets. And so there are opportunities to learn to code, to learn to wrangle data, to manage data. We need you
Mm-hmm.
there, and
Right.
you are contributing. In order for us to be able to interpret the data that we're collecting, we need people to help us interpret the data.
Mm-hmm.
So you can go for that route. What else? Like there's so many opportunities. You can volunteer your time. You can to do community outreach in the context of education and awareness of, in my context, cancer
Mm-hmm.
screening. You can. There are nursing schools. There are, of course, MD schools, PhD schools, graduate schools. You know, if you feel like, hey, I don't want to do a PhD, you can do a master's degree.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Master's degrees in biology, in genomics, which is the study of the genome, but at, again, big data level.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, and so I am also the associate director for diversity, equity, and inclusion at
Oh,
the
there
Cancer
you go.
Center. So a new role,
Yeah.
and so and one of my tasks is to help us figure out, along with my team, clearly not
Mm-hmm.
just me, but the leadership at the Sylvester Comprehensive Cancer Center, is to figure for us to increase the workforce of the underrepresented minorities that we see, and that includes for Miami and many places in the United States, if not all, Black people
Mm-hmm.
who are self-identified as Black or African American, Native Indian or Indigenous people. In some cases, certain subgroups of Asian, Southeast Asian folks, right? We want our workforce to be reflective of our population and our
Right.
community.
Yes.
And it's at every level. And
There
in
is a
leadership too, clearly.
yes. I'm also involved in the work that you just mentioned. I'm also co-chairing the DEIB initiative at my company too. So I think it's important for us to get involved in those areas. Like you said, having a
Mhm.
seat at the table and being involved in decisions that are being made that would affect people in our community. So most definitely, I think that's very encouraging to hear. Um, I want to go back to Black Genome because maybe I feel like I didn't talk about it a little more. What is that? And let me let you answer now. I'll ask the follow-up question.
What is the Black genome?
Mhm.
Well, okay. So first of all, let us I let's define some terms.
Yes.
So Black, as you know, Black is not a scientific word. It's a
Mm.
color,
Mhm.
but it is also a categorization that was established not by us, but about us. many years ago during slavery,
Mm.
during segregation. It's it's part of structural racism, and so Black to me. So we use the word because I'm in America, right? We've adopted, like, that's the culture, that's what we are. So we
Right.
can't ignore it.
Mm-hmm.
But Black means so much, right? So I'm Black. You said you're Black, right? So I don't make assumptions.
Oh no, most
Um,
definitely. Sophia,
okay,
we are from the same country, by the way.
I
We
know,
didn't
I
realize
know.
that in the beginning, but most definitely I am as black as they come, okay?
Right, but there's a spectrum, right? There's a spectrum of Black. Like,
Mm-hmm.
yes, we are Black,
Absolutely.
but
Mm-hmm.
as I said before, right? So how you self-identify is one thing. How we exist in the society, especially being in the United States, is another thing.
Mm.
But then at the purest level, it is our genome, our DNA that's
Mm-hmm.
in our cells,
Mm-hmm.
right? And our DNA gives us an indication of where we came from. It tells us about our ancestry. So the genome that I'm talking about here is our DNA in
Mm-hmm.
our cells and giving us an indication of ancestry. So as a result, West Africans are not so we're mostly similar across white, Black, everybody, more similar than dissimilar. But
Mm-hmm.
even in that similarity, and so, but there's a component of this dissimilarity that makes us phenotypically different, that we look different. And we know that the Black African genome, actually, the African genome is one of the most diverse genomes.
Mm.
The continent is huge. And guess
That is
what?
true.
We know about enslavements, right? So a bunch of people were taken from Africa, brought to the Caribbean, and were dispersed and enslaved for hundreds of years across north, south of the Caribbean.
Mm-hmm.
And we ended up also mixing up with our enslavers
Right.
through rape or unlikely consent. But so there was
It
that.
was forced.
Right, it was rape, right? And
Right.
then our communities are different based on who the colonizers were, right? So some
Right.
had
Right. Mm-hmm.
Spanish, some had, and then after slavery was abolished, we had more movements in the Caribbean and in the US. But in the Caribbean, we had indigenous laborers that came from China and came from India, right, into Trinidad, into Guyana, into Jamaica, a bit into Haiti. And then for other Caribbean islands, smaller, we had Middle Easterners coming in, Syrians, Lebanese, right? So
Mm-hmm.
we have all these mixes. Our mix is not the same mix as the African American living in
Right.
Georgia,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or a West African. So that is why I want to capture our spectrum of Blackness in the
Right.
context of our genome. And then so one of the things I've learned from actually going to this meeting, the African and the American Association of Cancer Research, I said to you in the pre-recorded session that I am a scientist mentor for the Sciences Survivorship Program. And that's a really wonderful program where survivors come and learn about science and can talk to scientists
Mm-hmm.
and learn about what's new and happening, end up talking to policymakers at the NIH. But one of the person who organizes this sub activity within this massive conference of this year was 15,000 attendees.
Wow. Hmm.
Um, she talks about all the time, data without context is useless.
Mm.
So that when I am studying a genome from a Dominican, I want to know that this person is Dominican, because there are multiple levels to the genome. There is the DNA, and then there's the epigenome. There is how our environment, how stress, how what we eat
Mm-hmm.
affects the way that our DNA functions. And so yeah, so I am taking the context, and that Black genome means that I am taking this, using the word that was ascribed to us, but really capturing that in the context of who we are, where we are from, where we live,
Right.
and how is that imprinting on ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's very fascinating. One of the things I want to go back and talk about is breast cancer, ovarian cancer. Um, I don't know in your work if you've come across any of those things, but it seems like Black folks are dying more than non-white folks. In your study, will you be looking to see why that is so?
So in this particular study, no, but we are doing other studies that
Mm-hmm.
capture some of that why.
Mm-hmm.
So there are multiple components to this health disparity. It's called a health disparity, cancer health disparity, where we see that Black women, actually Black women, Black men, with prostate, almost all the cancers, I think, except for one or two, where Black people have a higher mortality rate than people of white people of European ancestry.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are many folks now studying that, trying to understand the biology. I'm one of those people who are just trying to figure out the biology. That's one of the reasons why I'm
Good.
starting earlier, not once you have the cancers, but studying our normal cells.
Yeah,
Right.
nice.
But there's the biology, there is the socioeconomic, there in the context of access to care,
Mm-hmm.
right? So do you have insurance? How close are you to an academic cancer center where you will
Mm-hmm.
get, I bet, the best care? How how much access do you have to paying for the drugs, right? So you sometimes you have insurance, but you're underinsured.
Mm-hmm.
So can you actually take care of yourself? Do you have a social support?
Mm-hmm.
Imagine going through cancer treatment and not having people to help you. Are you isolated? So there are all these factors. And then, of course, are you treated well
Hmm.
by the treating team?
Mm-hmm.
If they're not offering you the best practice, the best medicine, you're not getting ideal care, you will not benefit. And we know this. I'm saying this because this has been documented over and over. And
Mm-hmm.
there are many people, many centers across the United States and I guess Europe too, who are aware of this and are actively working to
Mm-hmm.
be intentional about providing the best care for a person when they walk into the clinic.
Mm-hmm. Not just
Are we
not yeah, I like
offering
the fact that you say a person, not looking at you and saying you're a Black person. There's a different level of care, but a person, period.
right? So I know we look different, we have different colors, we have a different spectrum, but at the end of the day, I want you to give me the best care. I
Mm-hmm.
want to be offered the same test as the woman next to me. I want to be offered the same grace
Mm.
as the woman next to me because I maybe had to take time off work because I might be a single mom,
Mm-hmm.
or I'm not a single mom. I have like whatever, right? But because there are lots of, you know, so in addition, right? So that's the from the caring of the provider.
Mm-hmm.
And then we also have us, right? Where we mistrust
Mm.
what the care and advice is from the scientists and the clinicians because of the
Yeah.
historical reasons, justifiable reasons, but we also have to do better, right? That's why I'm saying that we have to participate in research
Mm-hmm.
ourselves, but to participate in research that hopefully is also driven by and or contributed by people from our communities,
Right.
right? So that you feel that this is a trustworthy research and so we have to adhere to the medication. Chemotherapy is really rough, for example, for breast cancer, but we have like that's the best tool that we have. We're developing more and better tools, more
Mm-hmm.
tools, better tools, but that's what we have now. And I know some people will say no, they don't want it.
Mm-hmm.
But
I think it has a
it
lot to do
is
with
such a
education.
multifaceted, yes, it is, but it is education, it is also trust. Because
Mm-hmm.
there are people who are educated and then they decide that they don't trust what this doctor is saying,
That is true.
right? Or they don't trust their team. So it is a combination of the two. And again, how we make this better is by diversifying the workforce, right? That you see people looking like you. So if you're a Latina lady and you come to a clinic and nobody's speaking your language and going through an interpreter, how are you going to feel comfortable, right?
Right.
Or if you're speaking Creole and nobody around you speaking the language and you getting the information from an interpreter and you're hoping that what they say is
It's
what they're really like you're
right.
hearing.
Right.
So So that is why we have to diversify the workforce and in particular cater to our communities,
Mm.
right? So I know Boston has a large Haitian population, a growing Hispanic population. Miami is a big Latin population, big Haitian population. We speak in, we are from the English speaking Caribbean, so we don't have that necessary barrier in terms of language and
Mm-hmm.
culture. But and so I can speak about my institution that we actively have individuals who speak these multiple languages who are part of our teams
Mm-hmm.
to enable the patients to feel comfortable that what we're telling them is what we hope is the best for them and that they adhere and can ask questions at appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
But that is a lot of work because before we didn't have that, right? It was once the people having the education and the opportunity.
Right.
So now we're catching up. We're catching up,
And that's good.
and it means that all hands on deck. So the
Mm-hmm.
people who are not in the biomedical workforce who want to be, there are many ways that you can get in.
Mm-hmm. So what advice would you offer to new scientists?
So new scientists, I would say identify a mentor or a group of mentors, a team of mentors,
Mm-hmm.
identify a tribe. You have to be bold. You should feel comfortable in your creativity. So
Mm-hmm.
don't hide behind your own brightness. I was that. I was I didn't I used to I'm the one who wanted to be in the back of the room. Maybe still I still don't be in the back of the room, just minding my head down, doing my work. Again, work hard, but don't be afraid of your own brightness and your own creativity.
Yeah.
Like
Don't be
don't let people
invisible.
dampen that.
Mm-hmm.
No, 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 no. So build that sense of confidence. Work hard, look for opportunity, find if a door is closed or you get a no, it is not no forever, but just be agile. Like
Mm.
science is hard, it's frustrating, it can be isolating often, and that is why I'm saying identify mentors. Hopefully you will find a sponsor and an advocate that
Mm-hmm.
will open doors for you, point you in some directions of opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and again, work hard, but don't just work hard. You have to like work hard and also identify those mentors, those sponsors, those advocates
Mm-hmm.
that you once those opportunities come to you, you can take it and go with it.
Absolutely. What would you say is the most rewarding thing about doing this kind of work?
So a few things. I don't know what the most, but a few things. I enjoy what I do. I enjoy what I do because I get to actually, as a non-clinician, get to have impacts in people's lives because the studies that we do identifying who has a mutation in genes and how that information can be disseminated and passed on to family members and
Mm-hmm.
how the family members can then do things to prevent and or screen early for cancer. I can I train, I mentor, I enjoy mentoring,
Mm.
I enjoy speaking about my work to folks like you and whoever else is listening, to educate. I enjoy the ability to think freely, which is also a source of frustration. But that is like, yeah, like it's all of it is rewarding. I get to talk to my community. I get
Mm-hmm.
to go to and hang out in all different interesting places in the world. I get
Mm-hmm.
to talk to my community here locally in Miami and learn from the community. Yeah. So
Absolutely. No, I can see, I asked you this question and just see you lighting up. So clearly,
yeah.
it shows that you are enjoying what you're doing. One of the questions I also wanted to ask you, I was involved in a research called the All of Us Research Program. It's also a program
Uh-huh.
led by the NIH and it was an Obama administration initiative. And we were talking earlier about us not being involved in research because most research studies the people that are involved are Caucasian um, Caucasian white males. And so the program is really, I was helping I was in this program and helping to promote the program for about 2 years. And it was an eye opener. We hear about research, we know about the distrust and not having the right information and and I'm so happy that I'm speaking to you, because in looking at in terms of when I was helping to promote this program, I saw so many people who didn't believe in the All of Us research program. The All of Us research program is really, the government is trying to get everybody involved, Black, white, you name it, everyone involved in one huge database. And they were trying to get at least 1 million people in that database, so that everyone, once they start doing research, everyone will get involved. Because if you're doing research on European white males, and whatever it is that you come up with, whatever drug or whatever you come up with, how is that going to benefit the people that were not in that study? And so I think a lot of education has to be done around educating us. And yes, things have happened to us before, but there's a lot that has happened, and systems put in place to mitigate some of those issues and our concerns. And there are people like you who are in the field. And I think one of the things I think that sold some of the senior folks at my company, they saw, I had a video where I was showing people that look like you, is encouraging you should get involved in this research. If it may not benefit you, it will benefit your generation. And so what would you like to say to people who said, I will never get involved in a research study?
Oh, so I agree with everything you said. I am also a participant in the All of Us study. It is open at our site at the University of Miami in Florida. And it is so important. It is vital that we are counted, that we are in it. We suffer from so many ailments: cardiovascular disease, #1 killer; cancer, #2 killer in African Americans in the United States and Black people. So by participating in studies like the All of Us, like the Chan Zuckerberg Ancestry Initiative, Ancestry Network that we have, we're going to be capturing us in our normal states, or even in our unhealthy states if we're sick, for example. And it is important that we are counted so that we can understand what is happening in our bodies, what is happening in people like us, so that we don't keep saying, oh, we don't know why, we don't know why. We can only start to answer the questions if we are counted. And so it is important. And again, the All of Us program is led by a wonderful set of folks. At our institution is Olvin Castillo and Dr. Robert Wynn, who is a Black man and is director of the Massey Cancer Center in Virginia. He is one of the, I would say, leaders of All of Us, the All of Us program. And I wouldn't even say leader, I think he's one of the major PIs, principal investigators. And so, yes, it is important for us to contribute, not necessarily to learn about our own ailments and diseases that we might be at risk for, but to also contribute to our current generation and the next one.
You're right.
We are the drugs that we are taking, the medication that we are
we don't understand that
the practices, we were not included.
Right.
So when we were not, as you said, we were not included, and therefore we see efficacy, or it's not as effective, or it's not on this and that and that. And guess what? We have a lot of catching up to do. But the only way for us to get caught up is for us to contribute and participate. And the cool thing about at least the All of Us study is that you get a report back, if you want, about your ancestry contribution, some of the known risk factors for cardiovascular or other things. So you have to consent to receive the information. If you just want to give your DNA and answer some cool questions about how you sleep, what you eat, how much exercise you do, and all of that stuff, similar to us, right? So it is really important that we participate.
Mm-hmm. I only brought it up because I think, sometimes people don't understand. And I see it especially in, I was involved in advocating for someone with mental health. And I was just looking at what the medication does to when you see people and they look like they're totally gone. And then a lot of times those medications have to go back to the provider and it has to be adjusted to that person. And again, it goes back to who was that medication tested on? So, they're giving you stuff that was not tested on you. And so it is vital that we understand the importance of just getting involved in research so that we can benefit when these drugs come out and it can really help us in improving our daily lives. I don't want to go and talk about this program, but I say this to say that people should really look at what you are doing, and you are the face of that project. And having you as a leader in that project, definitely, I think for me, that's a plus because it shows somebody who looks like you. And that, that is not any reason to pause. It's a positive thing because I'm going into a study and I'm not thinking, oh, this person is going to harm me. I'm thinking like, this person is going to help me. So I just want to really thank you so much for taking on this big responsibility because this is an area that is lacking. And for you picking that up, it means a lot to us as a community. And I want to encourage all those who are listening, if you're thinking you love the sciences and you're thinking of an area to get into, definitely, I don't know if Sophia wants people to reach out, or you said you love mentoring. So if someone wanted to reach out to you, how can they find you?
So I'm laughing here. So I have on Twitter. My Twitter handle is Sophia, SOPHIAHLGE. And my laboratory website is www.hboc.com, so hboc.com, and there you can contact that. My contact information is also, if you just Google me and you find me at the Sylvester Comprehensive Cancer Center website, all of my information is publicly available.
Right.
So feel free to email me, follow our work. We do, I'm going to shameless plug here. We do an annual Dolphins Cancer Challenge, usually in February. We just ended this year, but we'll be doing a run, a 5K run. It's 100 miles bike ride, 5K run, and it's a really great event where patients come, survivors, family members, scientists in Miami. And so yes, we try to like just be all out and all in the work that we're doing to support our community.
I feel it definitely. So before we close, I want to ask you this question. What would people listening be surprised to know about you?
Okay, so two things maybe, and then maybe it might not be a surprise because I'm from the Caribbean, but I love Carnival.
Oh, wow.
So
So I
you see, you're
heard.
surprised. Okay, so someone said something. Yes,
I'm gonna get in trouble.
yes. So I enjoy dressing up, and when I cannot, I am not happy. I'm very sad, but I enjoy participating in Carnival. It is my outlet to release the
Carnival.
stress.
Right.
Yes, Carnival.
After digging deep and doing all of this research, I'm
Yeah.
definitely, you need an outlet and you need to just, go and free up. That's what Carnival is all about, right?
Exactly. Free up yourself with family and friends. Like we end up partying with cousins, lots of cousins, sisters, and a
Yeah,
few friends, and we just have a great time.
Absolutely. And nothing wrong with that. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you would like to share?
No, I think, we talked a good amount about participating in biomedical research at all levels, of course, at comfort level of an individual, but to participate nonetheless, and how important that is for our population to be counted in and to contribute, so that we can improve our own knowledge about our health and our community's health. And then I will say one more thing, that if you feel something, say something. right?
Mhm.
If you
Yes.
feel something strange about your body, don't hem and haw and say, oh, well, it's maybe just a little pain and slip it off. Like, please go get access care.
Mhm.
Please access the care. Go get it checked out.
Absolutely. That is some really good advice and perfect way for us to end, Sophia. I want to thank you so much for coming on. And I hope the information you provided is useful to those who are listening. And that if someone is interested in getting involved in this work, I hope they reach out to you because your passion was flying through when I asked you the question about why you what is fascinating about this work. And so I want to encourage you to continue to do the work. And I hope others will join you in the fight because we need all the help we can get because we are behind when it comes to this kind of research. So, again, thank you so much for taking the time to joining us on the Defining New podcast today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.